Suzanne, let me keep going. So the second piece of testimony that the jury asked for today in their first note was David Pecker's testimony regarding the decision not to finalize and fund the life rights for McDougal. Why is that important?
I think they're looking at, in that case, decision not to finalize it. And what was it in the McDougal case? He just didn't go ahead with it. So I think they're looking at the pattern there. I mean, both that and the Dino the doorman payment were entered in. So I think that becomes kind of the pattern, in establishing, what it could go to intent, I would think.
Right.
And then the third and the fourth one are interesting because it's David Pecker's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting and then Michael Cohen's testimony regarding the Trump Tower. I was really focused in on those two because I think they're going to want to see what did David Pecker say, what did Michael Cohen say, and then how does it line up? Because Michael Cohen, they're going to want, and the judge instructed them this morning, because he's an accomplice, as they called him, they've got to have corroborating evidence for it. So they're going to want to hear what David Pecker said and what Michael Cohen said and see if there's any discrepancies there. I think that's going to be really important.
I have said in every hour, every day, that I have no sense of how the jury experienced any of this. But it is interesting that the jury did a better job than we did of sustaining the arc, right? We covered this day by day. It seems like once Michael Cohen took the stand, we became, amnesia patients, and everything that came before it got a lot less heat and attention. We talked about Michael Cohen and the cross and the one moment the defense had, and they're sort of incessantly. What the jury wants to see are three pieces of evidence and one piece of Cohen's testimony that are really from the earliest days of testimony.
Yeah, so and to your first point, I really think it matters. A jury tends to see things in a sweep. They tend to make credibility judgments relative to others, and we tend to cover, oh, my Lord, there was this thing about the October 24th call. On all this stuff, I think three things are important. First, they're focusing on Pecker, and as Sue said, they must find corroboration, that whether or not they believe Cohen or not. So that, to me, seems to be their zeroing in. Two, Pecker says he believes Trump is lying. Pecker says when by nice girl he thought this was true, etc. So that seems to suggest they're looking at his overall credibility. And third, maybe most important, he adds this later. It's only 2 pages of transcript. He'll be able to read it back. If there's any issue, go to Cohen. So it very strongly corroborates the idea that Michael Cohen put forward, that he's the fixer and everything he's doing because Trump gave the instruction to anyone and everyone, but especially David Pecker. That, I think, is the sort of, money part of that call.
What I see in knowing sort of the Trump political story as well as I did, what was revelatory for me in the testimony, especially from Pecker, who had immunity. So we'd never, as a press, we never knew what he had told the Southern District of New York, is that these are the parts that touched Trump. So the Trump Tower meeting, whether it's Pecker's testimony or Cohen's, they're both about a meeting in which Trump sits. And the Trump call to Pecker is about a call between Trump and Pecker. Cohen isn't on the line.
100%. I mean, that really should have been the headline. As Andrew says, this is the period where every single thing you reverse engineer and work 8 different ways. But that really is the headline. This is Trump's direct involvement. This is bad news for Donald Trump as I interpret this question. We're always interpreting. But it's really focusing on his credibility and his role in the scheme, including causing these false statements to have been made in the first place.
Remember that is Josh Steinglass at 8 p.m. last night. The last part of his summation was about, let's just go back over the highlights of direct participation of Donald Trump. He wanted to nail that down. And the PowerPoint he used, if you were in the courtroom, was sort of remarkable, because as he hit a point, it would sort of pop out the exhibit or the testimony. So it kept on populating. So by the end, what looked like a small list was like the tree. And so, Do
we have that, control room? Do we have those exhibits from last night? Okay.
Since
we'll try to. No, that's a great point. I mean, and it's interesting to me that the documents were in front of them day in and day out. We got them in a different method, right? Which is why we're trying to see if we have them, if we built them for television. But the jury saw the documents. I mean, they probably saw your famous witness, Exhibit 35.
Individual screens they have.
Correct, right in front of him.
Yeah.
So what they're looking for is actually what people said.
Yeah, exactly. And now because they have the laptop in there, so the sort of hard evidence is something they can access. That's why the two types of notes are really the only two types of notes we're going to see, which is law notes and witness notes.
Right.
And so that it makes total sense. It would be getting that. This is, just to warn people, this is the slog part of the, because you want the final answer, but there's a lot of like peas and vegetables you have to eat in order to get to the end. And so, if they also, you can assume if they are starting there will be other things like this along the way. And as Judge Merchan has said to the parties, I want what it is that you're each saying I should read, and he will make a decision on that. Presumably all of that will happen this afternoon, so that the first thing that happens tomorrow morning will be the read.
By Friday, that ringtone, when we hear it, we'll have traumatic,
exactly.
Pavlovian response. Yeah.
Speaking of Pavlovian responses, Vaughn Hilliard, I have not seen with my own eyeballs, but I've seen some press coverage of Donald Trump's expressions, I guess we can call them, messages, missives, his posts on social media. I think the technical term is flipping out. What is your sense?
He was posting a lot of right-wing commentators and allies, number one, who were posting their own, sides of the trial and why they think that Donald Trump should be acquitted. But then there was also other posts, which you are directly alluding to, and I think your description of them would be accurate. But it was him misrepresenting the charges that were brought before him and conflating the unlawful manner that there is part of the statute that is being articulated as part of the New York State election law, and conflating that with a broader idea that the jurors are able to find him guilty on a number of issues, and that it's not one specific charge that he is facing. And he himself said that he doesn't even know what the charges against him are, which just is not accurate. If in fact he was listening to the hour and 26 minutes of jury instructions, because over the course of that time, Judge Merchan read once but twice the actual statutes that he is facing and that the jury is deliberating on whether he is guilty of. And so, right now he is currently holding in a side room as the two sides are deliberating over what pages of testimony are going to be read to the jurors tomorrow. So he's still at this courthouse, and when he is not in the actual courtroom, he does clearly have access to his phone, and he has so far put it to good use during these more than 4 hours of deliberation so far.
Suzanne.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about Michael Cohen, because, those questions 3 and 4 are, I think, really important. They want to see Pecker's testimony and Michael Cohen's testimony. And I just want to pair that up now with exactly what the jury was told this morning by the judge, because there's been just so much discussion about Michael Cohen, and he is a liar, and can we believe him? And even if you just believe part of what he says, is that okay? And, still think he's a liar. And here's exactly what the judge told him, told the jury. Michael Cohen is an accomplice because there is evidence that he participated in a crime based upon conduct involved in the allegations here against the defendant. And what they were told was, in short, even if you find the testimony of Michael Cohen to be believable, you may not convict the defendant solely upon the testimony unless you also find there was corroborated by other evidence tending to connect the defendant with the commission of the crime. So whatever Michael Cohen said, they want to make sure that there's a backup. And I sense that's probably at the heart of those two, the questions 3 and 4 that came back. Very important.
And it's in the meeting,
corroborating evidence.
And the meeting is a thing for which there is no document. I mean, to your point about the close, the records are in front of them. The records are in front of their eyes. They're signed. They were entered into evidence. They were discussed by multiple witnesses.
But intent is very different.
Correct.
It's got to come from the discussions and the testimony. The documents do a lot of work in this trial, but you still have to come to intent.
And the meeting, there's corroborating testimony, precisely.
Right. And that meeting seems to establish the original sin, the original plan, where the plot was hatched, is how it was presented in.
But it also really does support, assuming that this is why they're looking at it, it does support the prosecution's theory of the case, because the defense theory of the case is all of that AMI stuff, that's irrelevant. Everyone does it. And it has nothing to do with Stormy Daniels. It's over and done with. That is not part of some larger scheme. That is something that is legal. Remember, that is campaigns do it. Apparently, Nicole, we learned that that's something that you and your journalist friends do all the time with campaigns. It's like campaigns and candidates always have secret agreements. So, but even if you didn't believe that, it's just like that was done and separate. We're now on to Michael Cohen and his own individual shenanigans with Stormy Daniels, as if that other stuff didn't happen. So the fact that they're viewing this as in the way that the prosecution, or at least they're testing that this is a part of the same scheme. Remember that the Josh Steinglass theory is the only reason that the National Enquirer backed out is because he frankly his general counsel basically said, no mas, you cannot get reimbursed, so I can't be a bank. We're out of this, because presumably that conversation was what any general counsel would say, which is, you're doing what? And so that's why they had to do this. And so connecting, that is a good part for if you're the state thinking about that, they're thinking of this as a totality.